Okay, let's dive in. The buzz around artificial intelligence, well, it's absolutely deafening, isn't it?
It really is, everywhere you turn.
We hear constantly about these startling capabilities, how it promises to revolutionize, well, everything. Healthcare, shopping.
Things straight out of sci-fi sometimes it feels.
Exactly. But for you, listening in, the real question we want to tackle today is AI actually delivering on those big efficiency gains it advertises? Where are these huge investments, these amazing tech leaps, where are they paying off in the real world?
That's really the core of what we're digging into. We're looking at two areas, and they're very intertwined.
Okay.
First, the tricky economic side. How do you even measure AI's impact on productivity? It's harder than you might think.
Right.
And second, a really fascinating case study, how AI basically forced a giant Google to fundamentally rethink its whole business.
So our mission here is to give you a shortcut, really, to understand the nuances, the ripple effects of AI on the economy, on the digital world.
They're cutting through the noise.
We're sorting through the data, the stories, so you get the clear picture.
And crucially, we'll see how AI isn't just, new products. It's changing how we spend our most valuable resource, time.
Time. Let's start right there. That old saying, time is money. Cliché, sure, but our sources are saying it's now the critical measure for AI's payoff.
It really is. It's not just about making more stuff, but how efficiently we do it. What does that efficiency actually look like?
And economists have a term for this, right? Total factor.
Total factor productivity, exactly. It's about getting more value from all resources, labor, capital, everything.
And the data there is, well, it's a bit surprising, isn't it?
It's pretty stark, actually. Productivity growth in the big G7 economies, it's slowed way down in recent decades.
Even with all this incredible tech progress, AI seems lightning fast.
That's the puzzle. There's this big disconnect between the tech hype and the economic numbers.
We see companies trying AI outright. Surveys show, 20 to 40% of U.S. workers and 13.5% of EU companies adopting it.
Yeah, adoption is happening.
Yeah.
Wait.
But why aren't those efficiency gains showing up everywhere? In the big picture statistics, what's the lag?
That's the million-dollar question, or maybe trillion-dollar question. Our sources point to something called the productivity J-curve. It's a historical pattern.
J-curve. Explain that.
Okay, think back to earlier game-changing technologies, like electrification in American factories, early 1900s.
Right. Big deal.
Huge deal. But the economic benefits, they didn't really show up in the national stats for maybe 50 years.
50, yeah. Why so long?
Because businesses couldn't just, buy a few electric motors and plug them in. They had to completely redesign, rethink their entire factories.
So moving from those old multi-story steam-powered mills.
Exactly, to flat, single-story assembly lines designed for electricity. It was a massive systemic overhaul, not just a simple upgrade.
And that brings us to another tricky part, measuring productivity itself. It's really hard, especially now when so much of the economy isn't making, widgets you can count.
Precisely. How do you measure the output of, say, management consulting
Sure.
or legal services?
It's not the number of slides in the deck or pages in the brief.
Definitely not. And quality is so subjective. How does a statistician measure the quality of advice? Even free stuff like Google Search, figuring out its economic value is super complex. ISPs, data centers, content creators all play a part.
So if counting widgets or even service outputs is so hard, how do we measure AI's impact? What are the sources suggesting?
They're pointing towards time spent, how much time, and by whom. It seems maybe a more useful metric.
Time spent. How so?
Well, historically, most big productivity jumps didn't come from brand new products initially, but from workers finding ways to do existing tasks faster. That freed up their time.
Okay, so less about the what and more about the how.
Exactly. It highlights process innovations over just product innovations. Think about the steamship. It didn't invent travel, but it radically changed the process, the time it took.
Or those just-in-time manufacturing methods from Japan in the 80s.
Perfect example. Not new gadgets, but new ways of doing things that saved huge amounts of time and resources, reshaped entire industries.
But here's something that jumped out at me. AI doesn't always save my time, the user's time.
Good point.
Like those self-checkout kiosks. They save the store money on wages, sure, but I'm doing the scanning and bagging now.
Right. The labor gets shifted.
Or calling customer service and getting stuck in that automated phone tree hell. You never reach a person. Our sources call this a time tax on consumers.
That's a great phrase, a time tax.
It really resonates. So if companies save money, but we pay this time tax. Does that wash out in the economy? Or is it just shifted cost? Does it even matter economically?
Oh, it absolutely matters. But that's where the measurement problem bites again. It's incredibly hard to track.
How come?
We just don't have much good data on how people actually allocate their time. Work time, personal time, surveys are infrequent, and they often can't tell if using some online service is genuinely faster or just imposes that hidden time tax through complex menus and hoops to jump through.
Okay, but for businesses internally, AI is proving useful, right? Automating tedious stuff.
Yes, definitely. Things like summarizing legal documents, formatting presentations, writing basic code blocks. That's where companies see potential.
So the opportunity for them is figuring out where the big time sinks are for their employees.
Exactly. Pinpoint those, automate them. But that leads to a really interesting kind of sensitive issue.
Which is?
Job security. The employees who know exactly where those time sinks are, they might be, understandably, hesitant to point them out if they think it means automating themselves out of a job.
That makes sense. This quiet resistance?
It could be a huge invisible barrier. Remember that Goldman Sachs report from 2023? Estimating AI could wipe out 300 million jobs.
Yeah, scary numbers.
But the truth is, as our sources say, nobody really knows the final tally. It's just too uncertain.
So it really circles back to time then. The ultimate measure of AI's economic worth, it seems, is how we all end up spending our 24 hours each day.
That seems to be the argument. And economists, statisticians, they need new tools, new kinds of surveys, maybe even tracking phone or computer usage patterns, ethically, of course, to really get a handle on it.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's look at this through a real-world lens. Google.
Right. A fascinating example.
For what, 2 decades plus? Google search has been the front door to the internet for most people.
Billions of users, almost 200,000 queries a second, nearly $200 billion revenue last year. It's a monster.
Still humming along.
Mm-hmm.
But now, facing this huge AI disruption.
And what's really striking is how Google reacted, or maybe how it didn't react initially. Despite having these top-tier AI labs, DeepMind, Google Brain.
They resisted putting AI front and center in search.
For a while, yeah. Our sources say back in 2021, the search team actually proposed putting a chatbot right there on the results page.
Like ChatGPT, basically.
Pretty much, but leadership shot it down.
Why? What were the concerns?
Big worries about accuracy, apparently. AI making mistakes. And also a deep fear of messing up their golden goose, the business model of search results mixed with ads.
So don't rock the boat.
Kind of. A former employee called it self-regulation. People just weren't daring to think about radically changing the core product.
And this wasn't the first time they hesitated, was it?
No, not at all. Think back to 2012, the knowledge graph. That was meant to give direct answers. They balked then, too, partly over accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Google Assistant in 2016, the internal debate was apparently, how the F do we put an ad on this? That shows the tension, right, between giving answers and making money.
There was that quote from the engineer.
Arvind Jain, yeah. He said Google felt this immense pressure. Google speaks the truth. That set a really high bar for AI answers.
What really surprised me was reading that before ChatGPT hit, the Google search team was described as being in maintenance mode.
Yeah, kind of coasting.
Thousands of engineers just tending this huge old code base, including, I couldn't believe this, 100,000 lines of code just for American Idol voting.
It's pretty staggering, isn't it? Shows the accumulated complexity.
And fighting over milliseconds of page load speed, latency, working on stuff they knew was maybe pointless just to look busy for Google.
It does paint a picture of inertia, maybe even a bit of complacency, which made the shock even bigger when it came.
And then, boom, 2022, OpenAI drops ChatGPT.
Right. And it looked a lot like that chatbot Google had rejected just a year earlier. Simple text box, direct answers, no ads, no clicking through 10 recipe blog posts.
And the absolute kicker.
The kicker is ChatGPT was built using Google's own breakthrough invention, the transformer architecture from their 2017 paper.
They invented the core tech.
They did, but they'd only woven it into search in the safest of ways. They held back from its disruptive potential.
So ChatGPT arrives. What happens inside Google?
Our sources describe it as pure panic. CEO Sundar Pichai uses these huge analogies. AI is like fire, like electricity. He calls it an existential moment for Google, maybe even for the web itself.
Wow, existential, that's strong.
The urgency was intense. They moved fast, reassigned over 1,000 engineers, like 20% of the search team, onto generative AI projects.
Go figure it out.
Initially, yeah, the orders were apparently quite vague. Then Elizabeth Reed, a longtime Googler, takes over search in March 2024. She's driving the biggest changes in years.
But she calls it an evolution, not a revolution.
Right, a constant evolution. But it's clear they're still wrestling with the fundamental question. What is Google search now, in the age of AI?
And we're seeing the changes. AI overviews.
Yes, giving that prime real estate on the results page to AI summaries, that's a huge shift.
And AI mode. The chat experience.
Right, initially for paying users, which is also significant, a crack in the free search model.
Reed even predicts the search bar itself might fade away, replaced by voice, visual search.
She envisions Google always hovering, ready to answer questions like an all-knowing friend.
So this whole shakeup, it's actually revitalizing the search division.
Seems like it. Morale is reportedly up. Some big names are even coming back, co-founder Sergey Brin, key engineers like Noam Shazir.
And they're making progress on the cost of running these AI answers. Because that's expensive, right?
Hugely expensive. But Pichai says they're bringing those costs down, which is vital if they want to scale this.
Okay, so Google is changing. But what about the rest of the web? The publishers, the websites that create all the content Google uses?
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin. And the picture there is, well, it's getting tense. Our sources say traffic to many independent publishers is down.
Because of things like AI overviews.
That seems to be a major factor. If Google gives you the answer directly, you don't need to click the link to the original site anymore.
Like that education company, Chegg, suing Google?
Right. They're accusing Google of cribbing their content, basically trapping users in Google's walled garden.
It's a real tension, isn't it? Users want answers fast. Publishers need traffic to survive, often through ad revenue that Google facilitates.
Absolutely. Google argues it's fair use, they credit sources. But the dynamic is definitely shifting.
And let's be honest, Google's old model wasn't perfect either, right? It propped up some questionable sites.
Definitely. Our sources mention how the system also supported, scammy affiliate sites, clickbait news aggregators, stuff designed just to game the algorithm and grab ad dollars, not really help users.
We've all felt that. The quality of search seemed to decline. People started adding Reddit to searches just to find real human opinions.
Yeah, academics confirm that feeling of decay, as they put it. It became widely felt.
And inside Google, there were concerns about incentives, the search team versus the ads team.
Right, a natural tension. Search wants useful results. Ads wants revenue. Some felt that firewall between them was getting weaker, especially as growth slowed.
That code yellow emergency in 2019, because they might miss revenue goals.
Exactly. They reassigned engineers specifically to boost queries, to get more ad clicks. The search chief at the time, Ben Gomes, reportedly felt uncomfortable getting too involved with ads.
And then the head of advertising ended up running both search and ads.
Yes, Prabhakar Raghavan, which, in the eyes of some insiders, really blurred that line. Though Pichai maintains the focus is always the true north is the users.
But this blurring, this focus, it seems to be creating a new problem now. AI spam.
A huge new problem. These AI tools make it incredibly easy to generate masses of low-quality content designed purely to game Google's algorithms.
That NewsGuard report, finding over 1,200 AI-generated news sites, up from just 49 a couple of years ago.
It's exploding. And here's the really tricky part. Google's own ad network places ads on hundreds of these sites, so Google actually shares revenue with them.
So major brands could have their ads showing up next to AI-generated spam.
It happens. It's a messy situation.
Lily Ray, the SEO expert, she said AI gives spammers a free and really easy-to-use tool, and the Google-publisher relationship is the tensest it's been in decades.
That sounds about right. The incentives seem misaligned.
Look at that interior designer blogger, Emily Henderson.
Yeah, her traffic dropped when AI overviews started summarizing her tips directly on Google. She's worried about losing the human internet.
Google says they care. They held that web creator event.
They did. They told creators their content is what Google wants to reward.
But then, mixed messages.
Very mixed messages. Engineers asking creators how to spot human content, while a top scientist advises them to use AI tools to write more content.
And telling someone flat out, never expect to go back to our old levels of traffic because search has changed. That's pretty blunt.
It really is. It leaves publishers wondering where they fit in this new AI-driven world.
So, okay, we've covered a lot. AI's fuzzy productivity impact, Google's massive ongoing pivot.
It really underscores that AI isn't just another tool, it's more fundamental. It's reshaping how we spend time, how information gets valued, the whole structure of the web. It truly is a constant evolution.
Which is what makes it so fascinating and maybe a little unsettling to watch unfold.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We see how it can free up time, but also impose that time tax, drive innovation, but also create huge tensions in existing systems.
Which brings us, I think, to the final thought for you, the listener. As AI keeps evolving, keeps pushing these boundaries of how we find information, how we consume content, what new ways, what new strategies will you use to find real value and make the most of your own very precious time?